UFC 287 was this past Saturday. A lot of crazy things happening in the world this week. The whole Trump thing, the Dalai Lama's kissing kids and asking for tongue. But we're an MMA show, so we're going to talk about UFC 287, not any of the other stuff. Me and Tiz just found out about the Dalai Lama thing like right before we started. Well, I found out a little earlier than that, but today I did find out today.
I literally just found out.
Yeah, all there is to that is the Dalai Lama kissed this kid on the lips and asked him to suck his tongue. That's gotta be the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Dude, what is this world coming to? But anyway, I don't. We're not a political or religious show, so we're not going to be talking much about the Dalai Lama. Although I wish we could. But we're going to talk about UFC 287 and all the events that happened in that, and Israel Adesanya wins in the main event versus Alex Pereira in their rematch in MMA. And obviously they fought 4 times in total, but this is their second MMA fight, and quite the knockout by Israel Adesanya. Now, just to start off, I guess I'll just give you my take here. As a fighter, I'm a huge fan of Israel Adesanya. I think he's a great competitor, and I think that's only been proven more in this fight. And I don't mean a great competitor as in he's really talented. I mean that in the literal sense. I think that he's not one of those guys who's just trying to come in and get paid. I think he truly wants to compete, and I think that shows in wanting to get this Pereira fight back right away, too. It didn't take much time after getting TKO'd in the first fight. But, the calf kicks were landing early for both guys. Pereira was landing good shots. I don't know if he was really hurting him with them, because I think Izzy's strategy was probably to play possum. And that worked to perfection. Using the constant pressure that Pereira provides, just clean right against him. And that finish was just phenomenal, going up against the cage like that. And I would imagine he was acting hurt. He didn't seem like he was once he threw that right hand, and just hit him. And the way he hit him too, on the hit him with 2 hooks, and then on the way down hit him with a left uppercut before that hammer fist. Just one of the cleanest finishes you'll ever see. And then the great celebration with the 3 bow and arrow shots, breaking the bow. That's the end. But I know you're a big Adesanya fan, definitely more than me. So what did you make of his win over Pereira, finally getting it done?
I mean, it needed to happen, right? You can't really. There's not much you can really critique about, at least in the sense. I think so. Maybe okay. There's some little something that okay. If you really want to nitpick, perhaps and stuff. I mean, I only watched the fight when it was happening live, but definitely if I would love to pick apart again. But I mean, there's that. Yeah, he did it again, man. I mean, if we didn't, I think now we just watched Israel Adesanya officially establish himself as a legend of the sport, pretty much.
If he wasn't already.
Yeah, if he wasn't, yeah, that's what kind of what I was thinking. But I think now, you can't. If you had this Alex Pereira just hovering over you at every turn, anything that, any sense of enjoyment that Israel Adesanya gets, Alex Pereira is right there to snatch it from him. He finally puts that down, bow and arrow, and he gets his title back. And there you have it now, because I think with this fight, what I was trying to say to start this was, like you mentioned, you brought up Possum before, because I think going into this fight, I feel like it was kind of known that, all right, he's got to welcome, Alex Pereira into his range. Because for someone who's as good as not getting hit as Pereira is, for him to get knocked out like that, for someone that he's already, beyond MMA, fought so many times before, it's a pretty big deal for, at least going into maybe a potential third fight, and then just going forward, whoever might be next in line for the both of them. But hey, man, if we're gonna talk about just as a whole right now, and Israel Adesanya, and for him to, that was, I don't think, maybe there was some predictions out there for a knockout, but I know I wasn't thinking it. I don't know if you were really, really worried either of them, honestly.
Honestly, I honestly thought Pereira was gonna get it done, but I didn't know in what fashion. I don't know. I just like I mentioned this, like how you're definitely like a bigger fan of Adesanya than I am, and like I like Adesanya as a fighter, but like he's not like my favorite personality. Like it's not hating. I'm not like hating on him. It's just I'm indifferent to it. Like I don't think because like Ariel was talking today about how he's like this huge inspiration, all that stuff. I'm like I don't really see that.
I don't
I
really
think
care
he's a
for the
star.
character either, but yeah,
Like some of the stuff that he says is just like it doesn't even rub me the wrong way. It's just like
the fighting style is just at his size, and at his size too. It's just for it to be as smooth and technical and just as silky as it is. For him, you saw it on this fight. For him to get Pierre with that overhand, and not just the overhand, because I think he after the first round, Pierre went to the corner and like he made it clear, like I think his coaches
too that he was talking over his coach. Like right when I saw that, I was like a little bit concerned because he had a good first round, but I don't know if he was gassed or he just looked like a little overwhelmed because it looked like the leg kicks were honestly doing a good amount of damage for Israel Adesanya. But then like in the second round, I don't know, it's just like all the technique went out the window when he was just attacking him against the cage. Excuse me, but I think that like
I don't think he really saw his right hand, Adesanya's right hand as a threat.
I just think he might have gotten too cocky. Like he saw him in the same exact position he was in the last fight, and positions that he's gotten him in kickboxing.
Yeah, and you kind of just said it before. That probably was like calculated by Israel Adesanya.
I think it was for sure because you mentioned this before. How I think it's too hard to stop that pressure. So I think you have to do something to counter it and not just circle out. Because if you just keep circling out, I think it ends the way that the first fight ends. But Izzy has fought this dude so many times at this point, and he's lost the other 3 fights. So he knew that, I'm not going to be able to counter this guy's pressure by just like trying to step into him. So I got to throw. You got to counter him at that point, because what else do? You just circle out and then keep letting them pressure you throughout the whole round. So I thought that's why I said like I'm impressed by how much of a competitor he is, because to go in there against a guy who's beaten you 3 times, knocked you out twice, and have no fear in that moment when you're in the firefight in the pocket, that's just incredible to me. And that's why I said like, he's a warrior in the cage. And you could say what you want about him outside the cage, and like I said, I have my own opinions on that aren't really that strong anyway, but I think that as a fighter, this dude is so great for the sport. And I kind of think of him, and I know this is like a comparison that he's gotten throughout his career, but it's Anderson Silva. That's who he reminds me of, because Silva was the same way. Not all of his fights were super entertaining, but those guys who could bring it out of him, those fights are classics, and you remember them forever. I don't know. I kind of cut you off before. I don't know what you were going to say.
I feel like now we're just at a point where, he can fight literally, like he might have already has just fought everybody that there is to fight, that he wants to fight, that would make a good big money fight, that would get a lot of eyes on this, a lot of pay-per-views, all that good stuff. And now like
you wonder, like he talked about Duplessis, that's one, but he's ranked.
See, that's what I was trying.
6.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I mean right there. Like now we're talking about a guy who's number 6, because
and that's a weird.
I don't know
fight to me, because like his reasoning for that doesn't. It's like a weird.
I don't
reason.
know what it could. I don't know what it could be. But I don't think. I think it's because the third fight between him and Pereira is not going to happen right away.
Neither do I. I'm glad you agree with that. I have my own theory for that, but I can get into it a little later, because I think this is a conversation in itself.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, what the talking point really is is this just Adesanya gonna wait it out until, the top of the division, the remaining contenders at the top, they fight it out? We'll
historically,
see.
he's never really done that. But at the same time, who else is there besides?
Exactly. There is no. I mean, if we're
Hamzat.
really gonna, if we're gonna put like legitimate stock into this, like Jan Blachowicz has kind of put his thoughts out there pretty much about like how, congrats on getting this rematch done, getting the title back. Now let's try another rematch, except for the middleweight title.
That happens. That's not gonna happen. He's too big at this point. And he was
Yeah.
making jokes on Instagram. He had a
he's
cigarette and coffee, and he's like, "Yeah, on the middleweight diet."
He's not making that weight.
I just don't see it. I saw on MMA Hour, Ariel was talking about John Jones. I was like, "What?" Like, no, dude. I don't see that one happening ever at this point. I think that
right.
He said like, yeah, they'll meet in the middle at 205. I was like, I don't think John's going back down there.
Right.
At this point,
way.
250
It's
pounds.
done. What does John Jones even need that for?
Exactly. I think Izzy needs that more than John, and I think that's always been the case. But I don't know. I don't mind the Duplessis fight, although I kind of think that that's a weird place to be because the reasoning why Izzy wants it is like a really personal reason, and then you bring up politics and all that stuff. That's like a whole other ball game. But I want to see Hamzat because I think Hamzat is the most nightmarish stylistic matchup for Izzy.
I think welterweight is Hamzat's calling.
No, he's not fighting at welterweight. No way. There's just no way.
You don't think a potential Usman fight?
He's not going to make the weight. Like there's no way the UFC lets him fight.
You can't trust him. You can't trust him.
I think maybe.
But it's UFC we're talking about.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like I think that Dana doesn't want this dude to miss weight in a title fight. I think like a main event like that's 5 rounds and maybe a fight night versus Usman is one thing if he misses weight. But like if let's say he wins that fight and then fights maybe Leon, Colby, Burns, Bilal, whoever for the title, and he misses weight for that destroys a whole pay-per-view. I think that there's nothing to be gained from keeping him down at welterweight, especially when I think he's got an easier path to become champion at middleweight. Because as a wrestler, we've talked about this before. I mean, there's not many guys who are going to be able to stop his takedowns at middleweight, and Izzy included, in my opinion.
I just think we need to see Hamzat back in there sooner rather than later, at the appropriate weight. He's supposed to be fighting at.
See, to me, that's 185. Like, I'm sure some people think it's 170 because he's fought there the whole time, but like, at some point, this is going to come back to haunt us.
His last win after the chaos from before that, he calls like Kevin Holland literally got back in there on this card and got a win. So, I mean, like, I think we gotta get. I think it's really just. I don't know at least if we're going to talk about Hamzat just individually, like, is it because no one wants to fight him, or is he being difficult? Because that either way doesn't surprise me, but
he kind of like calls out.
He's just exactly like you gotta figure it out with this guy already.
I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm just saying stylistically, that's the fight that
because I think welterweight, pretty much has Colby Covington booked already for Leon Edwards. So.
And we're gonna talk about Burns, who just kind of made a statement himself.
Exactly. So welterweight is jam packed. It's always been jam packed, and I mean, but that's why. Hamzat's there always cause that chaos.
There's the rumblings now though between Hamzat and Costa, and then Chael said today that fight's booked, which I don't take anything that Chael says seriously.
The only immediate fight at middleweight that makes legit sense to me is Whitaker
versus Hamzat.
Yeah, or you do Whitaker and Pereira, like.
It's definitely one. I don't know. I don't think there's really a storyline.
I think we gotta go.
I like Costa because Costa and him have already been talking, and it's been like dragged out for a while now. And I think that a fight between them would add some hype.
And if Paulo Costa's gonna be out here talking about $1 million per each fight, like a fight like that, that's the way to get to it. It's the way to get even close to it. So. I mean,
he's going to need to make a statement himself to get another fight with Adesanya because we're at the territory where we might be close to that.
That's the thing. I don't think Hamzat and Paulo Costa fight really moves the needle at all for who's gonna fight Israel Adesanya in the future.
Well, see, I don't know about you, but for me, for Hamzat, like, if they booked Izzy versus Hamzat right now, I would have no problem with it. But in an ideal scenario, I'd want to see Hamzat beat anybody at middleweight, and I don't care who it is. Like, Costa doesn't matter. Even Strickland, he can beat. If he has one win at middleweight, I want to see him fight for the title because I truly believe he's a terrible matchup for Izzy.
Great.
I love that. I agree with that, but like
it could headline a card and everything.
I just think that if Whittaker wins, then you're in a weird position because then Whittaker's the number one contender again. But then does anyone really want to see that a third time? I know some people kind of do, but I'm not one of them. I don't think that fight goes much different.
All right, I'll come out with it. Well, yeah, I'm one of those people that I'd be down for that.
See, but what do you think is going to be different? In 2 fights, he's not been able to really do anything against him. Whittaker versus Adesanya, I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I mean, yeah, at least for Israel Adesanya's next fight, I don't think that is happening or even makes a lot of sense. But I don't know, man. You never know what could happen in between. And that's the thing. Like, now you got. You don't want to do an immediate third fight between him and Pereira, and then so I don't know what else there is. Like, are we really gonna do a Duplessis?
I just thought of this literally right this second. Maybe because Izzy said he wants Duplessis. Obviously, I didn't mention his name, but that's what he was talking about. But he said he needs to earn it. So if he needs to earn it, what do you think of maybe like a fight between Duplessis versus Strickland? Because Strickland's coming off a win, and Strickland's a guy who hasn't fought Izzy yet. So it's like, if either guy wins that, you could make a better argument. Like, for Duplessis, if he beats Strickland, I think you can give him a title shot at that point because Izzy wants it. If Strickland wins, I think he's 1 fight away, which is a better position than we're in right now where there's no clear contender. Middleweight's in a weird spot. In another word, and this is kind of what I was saying before about what...
Yeah, man. This is like always with these pay-per-view man events, I obviously once the fight's happening and all that, and I'm watching the fight for what it is, like in the moment, appreciating it for what it is, and then afterwards I get so caught up in, all right, what's next? Like, how does this cause turmoil for the division as a whole and shake things up? That's what before when you passed it to me about the fight itself, like I got so caught up in that for whatever reason immediately I was having a hard time like actually talking about the fight itself and what Izzy did different like this time to actually get the job done in the way that he did it. So, and this time it's because middleweight is now in just such such a fuzzy state right now.
I mean, he's quite literally cleared out the division multiple times. And
yeah, and it's like,
if Pereira's not next,
yeah, he already, he's not going. It's not like he's going back to light heavyweight and then.
And is anyone even interested in that? If he wanted
that's
to,
not happening. I think light heavyweight already has contenders set. You got Prohaska coming back anyways. Who should, honestly, like, if Jamal Hill's not gonna get booked to fight before Prohaska is healthy enough to return, like Prohaska's gotta be the first fight. So, that there's not much going on. Like apart from the top. I don't know. Middleweight has just kind of been stagnant.
I just don't think
for a while now.
I don't think Pereira fights Izzy again right now. I think Pereira's probably going to go up to 205, like Dana was hinting at, and I just don't see why he would stay at middleweight at this point. Like, yeah, you're 1 fight away from the title, but you're also 1 fight away from the title at 205, and you could argue that those matchups are better stylistically.
Yeah, well, in Pereira's case, there you go. Like,
and then that's kind of where I see a lane for Izzy to go back to 205, because let's say they both keep fighting 185, 205. That's the only way I see a third fight happening. You don't want to see that at 205?
Yeah, but like the thing what I'm thinking about is I want to see, because it would be an absolute barn burner. But that's the thing. Like, I think 205 continues to just get, obviously when you have a guy like Adesanya and Pereira, the class below you, like, you know, the guys that are already there, like, they're seeing that, they're realizing that these are potential, like, threats, but, like, okay, they're literally in a division below us, like, you know,
crazy.
how can we, you know, either fix our training regimen to get in the shape that they are, or have the nimbleness and the technicality that they fight with, you know, while still packing a punch, as you saw on Saturday. That's what I'm thinking. And in that case, like, I think light heavyweight's a division that, you know, has a really nice trajectory going for it in terms of just depth and guys that you can put in any fight against each other in that top 15, and it'll make a good matchup. Yeah. And, you know, obviously John Jones is out of it now, so that's the thing. I don't know I think you'll obviously have a fight for Izzy Adesanya there, but, you know, Izzy would definitely, more than likely, be up for it if obviously it made sense and the time was right. But, you know, like...
See, I don't think it happens anytime soon.
Is it because he really thinks he become the champ of that division, or he just wants a good fight?
I think if Pereira goes up to 205 and becomes champion at any point, I think that's a fight that's going to get talked about automatically. But I think that Pereira... Now, let me say this, because I think Pereira goes up to 205 personally. I just think that's inevitable.
Yeah, it's
Do you think he walks into a title fight, or he walks into a number one contender fight? Because I think it's one or the other at this point.
Well, I think Alex Pereira's definitely growing himself, like, you know, a formidable enough, like, fan base and just the mainstream following that, like, the UFC, like, and they obviously see what he's capable of in the cage itself, and obviously his physique. Like, I think they would be inclined to, you know, push that, fast track that title shot and just give it to him right away, thinking that, okay, now he's actually fighting at his natural weight, like, so he's probably gonna look, you know, he could
it's scary that dude could be even better than he is right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, but yeah, that's a great question, because, like I was just saying before, like, you know, you got these guys already that have been at light heavyweight who are, like, could fight for that title any day now, and I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think Pereira. I would like to see a tune-up kind of fight, but
so would I, honestly. I think because I agree with you.
They might just give it to him, honestly.
I don't know, because I agree with you about 205 having, like, a lot of momentum as a division. Like, there's so many stars.
I mean, yeah, and also, too, like, you think about Pereira's middleweight run, like, he didn't have to do a whole, you know, he got the Strong Strickland win, and that's kind of it to get to Adesanya, which, okay, him and Adesanya have obviously a very storied history with each other.
And there was no one else.
And there was no one else. So, like, that, you're talking about that then for middleweight. Now you come to middleweight. It's still a very just, you know, kind of convoluted division right now. But
I like build up though to another fight, because if Pereira versus Adesanya ever happens again, I don't want to see it right away personally. Like, I wouldn't be mad if they booked it, obviously, but I think about boxing matches, because boxing, the way that they do it with those big fights, you know, we've talked about this being the downfall lately, but in the old days, like, you would have these two big names fight, and then if one loses, they'd have a couple fights in between to build themselves back up, and then the hype is there again. It's not just the guy loses and then fights for it again. You're like, oh, well, I just saw this fight. I think that could be really cool. That's why I kind of think it'd be fun for them to fight at 205.
You kind of have to
be built up.
You gotta start Pereira kind of just from the ground up again.
That's kind of what I think. Like, I think him versus anybody in the top 10 who has, like, an opening at 205 would be a good start.
Well,
and then work.
Because at first it was literally just this guy is Israel Adesanya's kryptonite, and then he proved it in the first fight, and now we see that he's capable of being beaten by Adesanya too. So
can we just talk about that storyline for a second? Because you kind of pointed this out too. We were so focused on, like, what's next, you know, now that this has just happened. Like, the storyline behind this fight has been one of the craziest things that you'll ever see, I think, in sports, let alone MMA. Just the fact that Pereira beat him twice in kickboxing, like, nobody besides the kickboxing crowd was really into it back then. And then Adesanya just randomly says like something about him in like an interview in 2018, 2019, and Pereira's like, yeah, I'm gonna beat him up here now in MMA just to show him that I'm not just some irrelevant bum. And he does. Like, he literally does. That's crazy. Like, the fact that this man heard Izzy say something, like, before he even became champ. Do you realize this? He said that, I think, before he even fought Whitaker. So, like, that happened, and this man was like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance took that personally. And he just went out and trained MMA for a few years and got fast-tracked, obviously, for the title shot. But, we just talked about that whole thing. But, like, the celebration after, and I'm not one for like crazy hyperbole in MMA really, but that was one of the better celebrations I've ever seen. And like I said, this is coming from somebody who's not like the biggest Adesanya fan as it is. I just thought that whole thing, and then I will say, what did you think of him doing the dead body thing to his kid? Because his kid did it to him. Because some people had a problem with that. I didn't. I thought it was pretty cool.
That was pretty funny.
Like the kid kind of had it coming. Pretty
funny.
Like. Because there were two angles, right? So there's like the camera angle that was just on Izzy, and then there was the one of the kid crying. I don't know if it's been confirmed that he did it to the kid, but even if he did, I think that's just like a heel move, and I always fuck with heel moves, as we know. I'm a big Colby guy.
Yeah, I guess the kid had it coming to him.
Yeah, man. But Adesanya, I thought that his fight IQ really showed in this fight, just using Pereira's biggest strength against him, because... I agree with Izzy, like, whether it's 185 or 205, Pereira's a nightmare for anybody because of that pace. Just think about how tough that is to just get walked down by a guy who's got the most elite technical kickboxing and one-shot knockout power. Like, at 205, I think that he's only going to look better if he goes up there. And at 185, I don't think if he does choose to stay down at 185, I don't think a lot of those guys do very well against him. Besides maybe a guy like Whitaker, because anybody who's got good wrestling, I think, could beat Pereira. But those guys who are just striking, like, a Strickland, maybe a Costa, a Cannonier, I don't think they fare very well against Poatan. But 205, I think, would be better just for the sport, because I don't think that Izzy Pereira 3 is necessarily next. And I think that if Pereira builds his resume at 205 and Izzy keeps winning fights at 185, we could be in store for a much bigger trilogy fight than we would be if we do it right now. But the only time will tell. Great win for Adesanya, though. But another fighter we kind of mentioned a little bit when we were talking about welterweight and all that was the one and only Gilbert Burns. And he dominated Jorge Masvidal and... beat him by unanimous decision. And I don't want to take away from Gilbert, because Gilbert, I think, is one of the better fighters at 170, probably in the top 3 to 5, and by rankings he is. But Jorge Masvidal just didn't look the same in this one. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, makes sense, doesn't it? He literally called it a career. Apparently he said that even if he won, he would have still called it a career afterwards. And I thought, the Gilbert Burns fight, like, to begin with, I didn't think was a great fight whatsoever, at least matchup wise, for Jorge Masvidal. Like, just got the stronger guy, the better grappler, like, good luck, pretty much,
like,
in that front.
Like, the only way Masvidal would get a win was if Gilbert chose not to grapple, and he kind of stood with him a bit, but even in the stand-up, it just
I thought,
wasn't there.
Maybe Masvidal's gonna get to, you said it, you probably set up some sort of combo with the jab and just stay out of Gilbert Burns' range, so he's probably gonna have to do a lot of just circling and stuff, but, like, man, like, that was super. Yeah, it was just he was completely outmatched on the ground, and that's that.
Obviously. Gilbert Burns is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the sport, let alone at 170.
But and I'm glad UFC still treats him as such and realizes that and gives him the fights that he should be in.
Burns?
Yeah. So, there you go. Great win for him. He's always, Gilbert Burns is always going to be in that title conversation, always around that top 5 in the welterweight division. And for Jorge Masvidal, I mean, I don't know if you were expecting it. I didn't know it was gonna happen afterwards, but you know, I can't. It's not like something that I saw him take off the gloves because I didn't catch the post fight. I only came back once I saw his gloves were off his hands, and like, oh, I know what that means. So, in Miami, like, there you go. That's why. Like, that's the only fight he was really able to get, the best possible fight that, you know, is actually got a lot going for it and stuff, and like, legit
and Gilbert
matchup,
wasn't just one of those guys who we were like, he's just gonna take Jorge down. Like, we were like, he's probably
and he
stand
didn't
with
get
him.
embarrassed or anything, like, you know.
Yeah, no, he just got beat. Really, that's what it was.
That's it. That's the day and age we live in, especially with this division, and that's that. This sport is just there's nothing. You're not promised a long lifespan. And
very unforgiving.
So, yeah,
that's what the case is.
But hey, man, in terms of Masvidal, like, for this guy to pretty much like just be relevant, almost just about every promotion you can think of, and actually be relevant in it and get good like money fights and be just a prominent figure throughout it all, like. Yeah, he did it right the whole way. So.
Oh yeah, he's a killer. This is me and you like going through people's resumes and stuff when we see fit, and Masvidal's resume is unreal. I think that I just think that this one, when it seemed to be like the end for me was when I saw the weigh-ins and he brought his kids to that. I was like, that's a little telling, like, because he never does anything like that, and right from there I kind of thought something was up, but. Go through fight week. Maybe it's just because it's in his hometown. But then his confidence just looked like it was diminishing throughout the duration of that fight. And in round 3, as Gilbert was hurting him, it didn't seem like the same guy anymore, like that we saw against Cerrone, Till, and like other guys, even KJ Noons back in like the Strikeforce days. But, he's had a great career. I mean, he's been fighting forever. Like you mentioned, he was in every promotion, Bellator in the early days. He literally fought at Bellator 1. Just think about that. Like, on April 3rd, 2009. So that's like 14 years ago. It's kind of crazy. But, so that's kind of crazy. First round knockout, too, by the way. Good on him. But obviously fought in Strikeforce for the title a few times. And the UFC had a great run at lightweight, beating guys like Michael Chiesa, James Krause, the greatest gambler in MMA history. And at welterweight, obviously, Jake Ellenberger, Donald Cerrone, and then the run that he had in 2019, man, just going from Till, the knockout of Ben Askren, which will be iconic in UFC history forever, the fastest one ever, 5 seconds. I'll never forget that fight, too, just going into it, being the big Ben Askren fan that I am, undefeated at that point, and I'm, like, just hyping it up. I remember I was with Jim in D.C., and, I was with Jim in Washington, D.C. I was not with Jim and D.C. That'd be pretty cool if I was with Jim in D.C. But, I kind of said that a little fast. But anyway, Askren was undefeated at the time, and I figured, like, if he got his hands on Masvidal wasn't getting up. And that was just washed right away when Masvidal just came out and sprinted at Ben Askren.
Sprinted right at him.
I mean, one of the best, we were talking about fight IQ before for Izzy, but that was a beautiful display of fight IQ, just knowing that Ben was probably going to resort to his strength and duck his head down, go for a takedown, just unreal. And then just the brutal beating of Nate Diaz. But after that was the 2 Usman fights, Colby and now Burns.
Yeah.
It's just, it's time. You know what I mean?
It's time.
It just seems like that was the perfect point. And he said that, like, if he was going to box or do anything like that, it would have to be something, like, outrageous. So maybe the door's not completely shut, but I think it's shut definitely for the time being. But for Gilbert Burns, kind of to get into him a little bit more, did you see what he said after the fights about how he wants to either be in a title fight or backup title fight, or they might as well just release him? I thought that was pretty bold to say, but I do think it was a good move to make it like a demand like that, rather than just be like one of these guys, please give me a title fight, I want a title fight. He's like, no, I don't want a title fight, I'm demanding one. But at the same time, I think it's realistic to say that Colby's going to be next. I wish it was just Burns versus Bilal.
Only in the welterweight division you get stuff like this.
Yeah, right. We got 2 guys who could be the number 1 contender, and Colby's the one who's getting the shot. Because Because he deserves it. That's what Dana keeps saying. He just keep. You ever notice that? He just keeps saying that. There's never like any. He came here. He made weight.
Dudes just outright demand their title shot.
Wait, but can we talk about that though? Because like, has Dana actually said the reasoning why Colby deserves it? Besides the fact he made weight. If Usman wasn't the champ, he'd be champ by now. But besides that, like, there's really nothing else. But if we're going in that world,
there definitely is a reason. There's definitely a reason why.
I think it's just to sell tickets. I don't think there's anything crazy behind it. Bilal's just coming up with his conspiracy theories. He's mad. I'm starting to get like, because Bilal, dude, he just keeps talking and talking and talking. I'm like, dude, you just gotta accept that it's not gonna be you. I think at this point, like, I hope it is. Like, I truly like Bilal deserves it. Like, I think that's clear at this point.
I mean, he's got to go through Shavkat Rakhmonov first.
Fucking, that's unreal. But I don't think Leon's doing himself any favors though at this point, because I thought Chael brought up a good point on the MMA Hour today, that when he said that, you know, it's one thing to complain and come up with like a solution to it, but like he just keeps saying that Colby doesn't deserve the title shot and he doesn't give up another name. So it's like, if you're not going to give the UFC another idea, I kind of agree with that. Like,
yeah,
you know, then either take the fight or give another name. Like, and he keeps saying that no one else deserves it. Burns and Bilal, I think, both deserve it at this point. So for him to just kind of like scoff at Colby and then just deny that Burns or Bilal deserve it, I think that that's kind of weird on his part. But I don't know. I think that Leon's got his hands full with any of the next three guys that could come up there, whether it be Burns, Colby, or Bilal. But either way, the welterweight title picture is kind of log jammed at the top, as it's been for years at this point. So I think from there we'll just kind of move on to the next fight, which is Font versus Yanez. And I don't know, I kind of have like my own opinion about this, because I think it's been clear on this podcast, like for the time being that we've done it, I kind of thought that Yanez was kind of overhyped, not in the sense that he wasn't good at all. Like, I think he is a good fighter. He's got really good striking, but people try to like make the argument that he's the best boxer at 135, and they've been saying this since like he was before he even got into the top 15. And I remember saying to you, like, if he runs into any of these guys like a Font, a Sandhagen, and O'Malley, we're probably going to find out that this is just a hype train, and we found that out pretty quickly. And like, I'm not saying that Yanez doesn't have potential. I think he really does, but I figured that it was only a matter of time, because in all of his wins, he was getting hit. Against Tony Kelly, you know, even before that, he was getting hit in those fights, even though he ended up turning the tables, which is impressive enough. But my view of it was like, there's going to be a point where he runs into a guy that he can't just knock out.
Yeah, that's what people gravitate to, at least initially. Like, they see a guy weathering the storm, facing adversity, back against the wall, and then come back and then triumphantly win. So that's pretty much that.
When you're doing that to guys,
there you go. Now we just got, at least, you know, I won't try to claim anything at all, but at least when you're in your defense, obviously you just saw what happens when, I won't say it like that, like, oh, this is what happens when you improperly fast track somebody, but you know,
I don't think he got fast track. I should say, because I might be a little harsh in like how I'm putting it, just because I felt like this was going to happen for so long now. But I do think he's earned the fight. But okay. I figured once he got to it, you were going to see him come back to earth, because he's got, like, when you're getting hit by a guy like Tony Kelly in a fight that like you ended up winning, weathering the storm and knocking him out, like, those, because he was calling out Sugar Sean for like a little bit, I think, at that point too. And I said to myself, like, if he fights Sugar Sean, he's not going to do well, because Sean picks apart guys like who fight like Yanez easy.
Rob Font, like, he saw that. He saw it immediately. Like, he wasted no time. I think, honestly, from the get-go, like, I didn't see the fight going any other way.
People were saying Yanez
I saw it like a mix with like how what we've already seen from Adrian Yanez, where he's going to get hit. He's going to get hit quite a bit. And, you know, whether that adds up to a knockout or whatever, a finish, then so be it. But he's going to get hit quite a bit. At least with Rob Font, opposite of him, he probably won't return it all that much. But, you know, if he does, then it won't be all that significant. Like, Rob Font will probably have him handily beat in terms of striking. And then the ground, it's just, all right, are you going to get Rob Font to the ground? Can you set up, because, like, I think Rob Font just had him, yeah.
He got sneaky jiu-jitsu, too, Rob Font, so even in there, it'd be, like, a little rough for him.
I think Rob Font just had him scattered out the entire way through.
Yeah. I honestly, like I said, I thought Yanez earned a matchup like this, but when I saw that it got booked, I was excited, because you know that these two guys are going to stand in there and trade. But I didn't really think it was... I didn't think that Yanez was going to get this one done. Because, like I said, I figured that once he came up against a guy who was equally as good on the feet against him, he was going to get hit and pay for it. And that's what I'm saying. Here we go. Like, and Rob Font, I think Rob Font is kind of what people were hyping Yanez up as. Rob Font is the guy who's a good technical boxer, but now Font, he just called out Davison Figueiredo. I don't know if you saw that, and I loved that because, dude, that is another fun fight. He said he wants to fight him 5 rounds in a main event in Puerto Rico for a fight night, which, hey, man, nice. I'm here for it. I love it.
Get the hometown, too. Nice.
That's what I'm saying, dude. That's sick. And Figgy's such a good matchup for him. That's like a really good stylistic matchup between the two of them because you know that they're both going to stand and bang. And now we get to see what Figgy can do at, I guess, what it would be his natural weight class, right? So
there you go.
I think Yanez will be back, though. Like, I'm being a little harsh because it's not even his fault because, like, I like Adrian Yanez. I think he's cool. But it's just, like, when you watch him fight on these, like, fight nights that have, like, no names on them, and then you got the guys on the desk being like, this guy's the next big thing. He's going to, like, run through everybody. He's so good on the feet. And I'm like, I haven't really seen what you guys are talking about yet.
Yeah.
Like, he's good, yeah, but the way that they were talking about him was that he was, like, otherworldly at boxing.
And that's why, like, kind of like, unless somebody already handily has, accolades behind them and stuff coming in, like, first guy I think of, Bull Nickel, for instance, coming straight from college, being a freak of a wrestler there, and then coming straight to UFC, like,
dude, even Pereira, like, that's we're just talking about a prime example of that.
Actually, I think that's the beauty of, just the art is where, like, someone sees, fans might gravitate towards one type of fighter and how they might fight or carry themselves, and how their fights go and what they pick up from that, and then someone's gonna be way more critical about it and a lot more honed in and focused on, and then really just really pick apart. I don't want to make it seem like, like you're just finding every little thing to critique, but that's it. Like,
for me it was like the flaws in his stand-up were like apparent even in the matchups before the top 15. So my viewpoint has just always been, I think unless he improves, when he gets to these top guys, they're gonna take advantage of that. And Rob Font did exactly that. And now
good for Rob Font too. Yeah. Definitely really needed that because you can already tell from them. I don't know whether he wanted this fight or what, but it's not like he really is in much of a position to say like, well, fight, like, yeah, okay, you're one of the best bantamweights right now, and have been for a while now. Sure, you could get the fight you want, but and the recent form you've seen Rob Font in, coming off a few losses and whatnot, like, I think for a guy that was already extremely underrated, I think this fight was for, okay, we're giving Yanez a name, we're giving Yanez a top 10 name now, so he gets it done against Rob Font, pushing him forward, and then, people maybe aren't all that fazed about Rob Font and the skid that he's on, but that's because I don't think people either just forgot about Rob Font or didn't really care about Rob Font to begin with. So
they might have forgot, honestly, at this point, just because 135 has been moving around so much lately, especially at the number one contender spot with O'Malley and now Murat.
Yeah, you can't forget. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Sandhagen.
Man. It's definitely a mix. Like, he's just the guy that kind of gets Like, he's just. I don't want to say lost in that shuffle because I don't think he gets lost in that shuffle. I think he's very much in that mix with these guys.
Yeah.
And that's that.
I mean, real MMA fans know how good he is on the feet, and he's just not that much of a talker. Never really has been. And, like, I kind of like that about him in a way because he's just this tough, gritty boxer. I love guys like that. Like, that's why I was such a big fan of Masvidal when he was, like, around really in his prime.
Yeah, and there you have. I mean, there's a guy that I guess, I don't really even know. Maybe UFC wanted more of, that, like, dark side from Rob Font, like, to get him more vocal and maybe, like, pissed off. And hey, now he's calling for a Davison Figueiredo fight. He wants it in Puerto Rico. Like,
that was so smart. Like, I don't know how none of these bantamweights have thought of that. Yeah, I don't know why Merab didn't do that when he had, because Merab, if he's not fighting for the title, you might as well call somebody out, right? Like,
yeah, man.
I thought that Rob Font made a great career decision by calling out Davison Figueiredo, but when they fight, that's when we'll find out if it really was a great career decision. But I think that for Font, it was a good rebound win. And, yeah, I mean, he's just in a spot where he just has to keep piling them up, and we'll see what happens. But another guy who was kind of on a bit of a skid who was able to get a win was a fan favorite. Definitely one of my favorite fighters, Kevin Holland. Knocked out Santiago Ponzinibbio. And that was another one I kind of was questioning how Ponzinibbio was going to do in this matchup, similar to how I thought with Yanez versus Font. Just because Ponzinibbio is getting a little older, and I didn't think he was going to be as fast as Holland, and that just seemed like that's where it ended up. And I don't know. Let me say this, because I think this is really where the conversation goes. I think Kevin Holland looked like Kevin Holland in this fight, really. That's the only way to talk about it. But where is his ceiling? That's kind of the question that comes out of this, because he's not going to go back up to 85, I don't think, to really do anything crazy. I don't know. I just don't see that happening. But at 170, I think that's his more natural weight class. But then when you get more towards the top, he's going to be facing some really good wrestlers. And he's, I think, dramatically improved in that department. But I think that there's not really much that you can do against a guy like Colby or Burns or Usman, because those guys, they've been wrestling and grappling their whole lives. And Kevin Holland he's a striker. That's just, you would be I think I heard this a little bit when it was Gane versus Jones. Ciryl Gane could train grappling all he wants, but John Jones has been wrestling since he was a kid. So there's no training that's going to make up that ground. And that's kind of where I wonder what Kevin Holland's ceiling is, because on the feet, I think he has the potential to be one of the better guys at 170. But on the ground is where it worries me, because I think it's an uphill battle.
I think the ceiling's already lowered for Kevin Holland. I think ever since he moved to 170, I think his ceiling was at a peak when he was fighting 8 fights in 1 year and just constantly in there, still at middleweight, and just still making that name for himself. And he had we all know about that. He had a super successful run during the Apex era, and then I'm
looking at that run right now.
I think
Dude, how many fights? I'm trying to do the math in my head as you're talking. This is because he fought Anthony Hernandez, Fluffy, in May of 2020, Buckley in August of 2020, Darren Stewart.
I think with Kevin Holland,
another month later. God damn.
Yeah, I think Kevin Holland, the move to 170. I think we've talked about it before when it initially happened. Smart move. I think it's the right move. He's going to instantly have that reach advantage over just about anybody, and you saw it with this fight, and,
I thought this was one of the first times he was actually really effectively using it. Because
Yeah.
I thought at middleweight he didn't do a great job at using that length, but I think at welterweight he's really improved.
Yeah,
at that.
but that's the thing, now we're not talking about this division where there are all these top world-class high-level grapplers, and, reach is only going to get you so far in that. So, yeah, man, I don't really know. He would really just have to seriously pressure somebody, and that wouldn't really work either, I think.
How about this? Do you think Kevin Holland can break the top 5 at welterweight in the next like 2 to 3 years?
No.
Damn. Okay. I want to like disagree, but it is kind of fair because you look at the welterweight top 15. 13's Chiesa, that's a grappler.
Well, I think you should make an argument.
Sean Brady's number 9.
I think you should make an argument for why he can and why he will, in your mind.
Well, I'm not even saying. I just was genuinely curious at what you thought. I think it's debatable because I think if you can give him the right matchups, it's possible. Because there are strikers. Like, let's say you give him, I don't know, you give him a guy like Maddalena. Well, Maddalena is a tough fight for anybody. Jack Della Maddalena. Maybe there's Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal. You just saw Wonder Boy, so that's not going to happen again. But then, like, you go from there, like Burns, Bilal, Hamzat, which I don't think is... Obviously, we saw that one, too. Colby, Usman. That's, like, the welterweight top 5. And then 6 is Shavkat, 7's Wonder Boy. So it's like, where do you even insert him in the rankings? Because Masvidal's going to be out if he retires, so you wonder who they're going to bump up.
I don't think he's meant to be in that top 5 either, honestly. So
tough road.
Yeah.
I wonder what will happen. I love Kevin Holland, man. I'm such a big fan of his.
It's just, yeah, man. The top of welterweight, has been and still is like. I mean, you lost Masvidal, but it still is just so like just strong, and those guys still have a lot left to give, and so, yeah, I think. Kevin Holland, I mean, how old is he right now?
I can tell you that right now. I have Tapology open. He's 30. His birthday's in the day. Actually, his birthday is November 5th. It's kind of funny. A couple days after yours and one day after mine. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree with you. I think that I'm probably more hopeful than you are. Just in the sense, I think that the UFC likes him. And I think that there's potential that they kind of give him the right fights to get to that top 5. But I also agree with you that it's like much easier said than done. And he's going to be definitely tested on his way up there if he does get there. But hey, man, at least he got to like shake Dana's hand and Donald Trump's hand after the fight. See that? He saw the big dog after the fight. Dude, that was wild that Trump was at the fights. I think I'm probably gonna get like shit. We're gonna get shadow banned just that I mentioned his name now. But I thought that was kind of cool. He's sitting there right in front of the. I think that's badass. I think you get all politics aside. Like we're not. I'm not gonna talk about what I think of that whatsoever. But like all politics aside, I think it's pretty badass to get like indicted in like a national story. And then that weekend, just like watch the fights cage side like nothing happened. Like I think that's a badass move, no matter who you support politically. That's pretty funny that Trump decided to pop out in Miami. Got a big cheer from the crowd there. I didn't think they were gonna show him on the broadcast, but they did. So that was something. Crazy scenes out there in Miami. But the last fight that was on the main card that we want to talk about was. C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez, beat Raul Rosas Jr. after, Raul had a pretty impressive first round, but he just kind of gassed out after that. I don't know. I think we're in like Chase Hooper type territory here. I think that Rosas has like a lot of potential, but his striking just has to improve. And the fight IQ. I thought the fight IQ was really lacking in this fight. Just to be constantly scrambling for submissions like that, aggressively hunting them, you're going to get tired. Like, anyone who's like has rolled at all knows how hard that is to just keep that type of pace, especially 15 minutes.
Rodriguez had just kept fighting his hands the entire time, pretty much. And that's it. Yeah, exactly. Rosas wasn't ready for that. That's an IQ thing, like he just said, so... There you go. Yeah,
I saw Sean Strickland say this, and I'm wondering what you think, because I hadn't really thought about it, but now that he said it, I'm kind of worried, because I kind of agree, to be honest. He said that he's worried Sean's not worried. Let's just be clear. Sean Strickland doesn't give a fuck what happens, but he said that he thinks that Rosas might become the next, like, Sage Northcutt if the UFC doesn't, like, kind of pump the brakes on the guys that they're giving him, and I thought that was a great comparison, because Sage was another guy who was young, flashy. A lot of people liked him. He was like a big thing coming out, and he just kind of got beat by guys like Mickey Gall and just dudes who were just, older and more experienced. And I think that if you really want to push this guy, you're going to have to do it slowly. And, like, we're not too far from, like, reports that, like, Rosas was saying he's like, yeah, I could beat Sterling right now. I think that conversation can be put to bed for good if it wasn't already. But I think the kid has potential, dude. And isn't it wild, by the way, that I can call him the kid? I've been waiting so long to be able to call an athlete kid, like Dana does to everybody, like, because, we're young. There's not a lot of UFC fighters who are actually younger than us, but Raul Rosas, he's a kid.
That's the one.
But it is wild that he's in the UFC at 18 years old and, signed his contract at 17. I think he has potential. His grappling is incredible. I just think he needs to work on the fight IQ aspect of it. Like, I think if he could work on his wrestling entries and, like, get good takedowns and land in good positions, he might be able to, like, use his top control. But I think that's part of the problem because he's one of those guys that there's no real setups to his takedowns. Like, you can clearly see when they're about to come. Like, he just gets you up against the cage and he just kind of, outworks you there. And he's damn good at that. But that's a tough thing to do over the course of 3 rounds and in a title fight, 5 rounds. So I think he just needs to improve his cardio, but only time will tell with that guy. I think that he does have some serious potential, though, in the future. But let's get into some of the prelims a little bit. I thought that that Kelvin Gastelum looked fantastic in his return against Chris Curtis. Just what did you think about that fight?
I mean, the easiest fight of the night call I've ever made in my life. So there you go. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I think you would think it would be the other way around in terms of the guy who hasn't been active and then the guy who has been active. The guy who has been active is going to be the one straight from the gate putting the pressure on and trying to overwhelm. And then the guy who hasn't been active is going to, probably have to weather some of that. And then, all right, you just lost a round. Now you got to get, all right, like, put any hiatus, put all that behind you. Like, this is it right now. Like, you got to foot on the gas pedal. But this was the other way around in the sense that Kelvin Gastelum was on. It was Chris Curtis who seemed just very tentative and didn't really know what to do with Kelvin Gastelum until, a fight that actually got started in the second round. And it's like, oh shit, like, Chris Curtis lost that first round. Like, now, like, we're talking, like, if Kelvin Gastelum, like, if he can keep this pace up, and then, which is obviously a huge question mark in and of itself, with Kelvin Gastelum, just
Having
alone. No, just Kelvin Gastelum, period. But now that you add
Really?
Kelvin Gastelum being
I don't know.
out.
He's got great cardio. Kelvin? What fight are you thinking of?
I'm not thinking of a specific fight. I've just been thinking about.
He's got good cardio.
It's been a while, man.
That's kind of why I thought you were kind of saying, because I do agree with that. Like, I think that there's right to question it just based off that part of it. But this dude, I mean, he looked as good as he's ever looked.
Well, then there you have it. It didn't play literally a factor at all. So I don't think Chris Curtis really knew what to do with Kelvin Gastelum. And
I mean, Gastelum at his best is a tough matchup. I mean, we saw what he had in his fight versus Izzy. Well, like, what was that, 2019 at this point? 18 maybe? He's a guy that when he's at his best, he's got incredible boxing. He gets in and out of range so quickly.
I didn't see him being at his best. I'll say that.
Well, I'll put it like, maybe it's not his best performance. I think his one of his
No, I mean, no, I agree with you that he was at his best. It's just I didn't see that. I didn't see it coming.
Oh, okay.
I thought he was gonna look,
Yeah, because I should say he was getting hit. Like, it's not like he was dominating the fight, but in terms of like doing what Kelvin Gastelum does, in terms of like getting in and out of range and landing those quick combinations, and that's why I love that he still fights at 85, because at 170 he was struggling to make the weight. And at 185, he's so much quicker than everybody, and I love that. Because he's like, you wouldn't think, that, like, when you look at him, like, oh, this guy's like a top 185er. But then when you, like, look at those fights when he was, like, really at the top, when he was fighting Izzy and, like, he was supposed to be fighting Whitaker at that one point, like before he actually did, obviously. But I think Gastelum. Do you think he still has potential to get in the top at that division? Because I think that it's still there. I really do.
Me too.
I think that he's just had some tough luck, some rough losses. Like, I'm gonna go on his Tapology.
I think a win like this shows that. I think you had Chris Curtis, who was on a come up of his own, and now that gets stalled. So, Kevin Gastelum, it's just good to see him back. It's good to see him make that walk again.
He lost in the war to Adesanya, lost that really close decision versus Darren Till when Till first came up to middleweight. Then there was that heel hook versus Hermanson, which was like, that was just, shit luck. Like, you get caught by the thing like that in the first minute. It's kind of tough to get out of. Then he beat Ian Heinisch and then lost 2 decisions, one against Whitaker. And the Cannonier one, I remember that fight. That one was very close. I remember I don't think we had the pod at that point, but I remember did we have the pod? No, we definitely did. This is 2021. So, and then, God, that's crazy. It's been almost 2 years since his last fight, and he had 3 canceled fights in the meantime. Yeah. I think he's still got it, man, because he's only really lost to the better guys in the division, besides Till maybe. But that Till fight was pretty close.
Yeah, he's still got it.
Yeah, man. I hope he gets like a good matchup coming up next, because he's someone I like watching, and I think that people who have been fans like only since the beginning of the pandemic, I think that they don't truly understand just how good Kelvin Gastelum has been, and I would love for them to see him just get some big wins at middleweight. And I think that's a guy, if he can work his way up again, that's a rematch versus Adesanya that I would love to see. So, I don't know. There was a point in time during that losing streak and all the injuries that I thought that, Gastelum was never really going to get to that point again, but I was really impressed by how he looked in this one, and I think that the hope has kind of been reinvigorated, at least for me, and obviously, like you said, for you too. But another one, I wasn't really going to talk much about this fight, but I figure I'll mention it because we were talking about returns. Michelle Waterson, she lost by split decision, but she looked pretty good in her return fight. I think the decision was, you could question it, but at the same time, it was close enough that I thought that...
Okay, so the judging for this card actually made sense.
Yeah. This was in Miami, so Florida judges, I can't really remember many times where they've messed up that bad, so I was happy with it. Thank God this event wasn't in Texas.
I think,
Masvidal probably would have won the co-main event if it was in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, if this fight was in Texas, then freaking Waterson Gomez would have had the easiest unanimous decision of her life. But at least this was an actual split decision, and rightfully so, because that was a pretty hard fight. Like, that was a pretty hard fight too. Yeah, and it was a good fight too. But it was a pretty hard fight to judge, honestly, especially that first round. That first round had me scratching my head, but
that one was close. I even now
that was, I don't have a good return from Michelle Waterson.
When I was watching it, I'll say this though, when I was watching it like for the first time live, I did give it to Waterson, but then they gave it to Pereira, and I really thought about it, and I was like, I get it, because she was landing some big shots. So I think that's a matter of like not damage versus control, but damage versus volume. Because I think Michelle had the better volume, but Pereira was landing some nice shots. So I don't know. People can debate that one. I'm not really sold either way. So that's why I'm not like gonna scream robbery like some people would want us to. But I don't know. The last fight,
like some people just do anyways.
Yeah, well that's always gonna happen. MMA fans can be toxic, dude. I mean, even with
be toxic.
Yeah, well, I said can be because like there's people like me or you and like
they are
like-minded who are normal, but then there's like the other sect of it that are like commenting 3-1 under Izzy's posts and just dumb shit. So I don't know. I there's different like I'll say that as a Yankee fan, I think I can compare this to the Yankees because there's one section of Yankee fans who are like just the worst people on earth, and then there's like people like me who are rational and like the Yankees and are respectful.
Well, the thing with toxic people, so when they love dishing out the toxicity, but then when it's dished back at them in the form of Israel Adesanya playing dead in front of the guy he just knocked out, his kid, it's
They start crying. They
now
start
it's
crying
like,
about
what
it.
the hell is wrong with you, man? Like, if I had any respect for you, it's all gone. You're gonna get knocked out in your next fight, yada yada yada. It's always just fun to see, because as the athletes, not that they even have to, they don't have to acknowledge it at all. Like nothing, like it doesn't even matter at the end of the day. But it's not like they really get the opportunity to do so either. So when you get the opportunity to get back at them in that way, like, yeah, it's pretty, like, it's amusing to see. It's amusing to see.
Yeah, no, I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny that he remembered it. I think it was cool that he was self-aware enough to literally say how petty it was. Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't denying that it was, like, a petty thing to do. But, I don't know, at the same time, I also understand the other side of it. Like I said, the thing with me with Izzy is, like, I don't know, I don't like people who, like, talk about themselves in the third person. Like, that's just, like, a douchey thing to do. And he does that quite a bit. But I don't know. I think sometimes he takes himself too seriously, but at the same time, I think he doesn't really give a shit what people think, which is something I really respect. So that's, we'll leave that there because we kind of already talked about Izzy a lot. But another, to get further down in the middleweight division, though, someone who's I think is going to be rising through the ranks pretty soon, Joe Pyfer versus Gerald Meerschaert. Dude, did you see that knockout? Oh my God. I've been keeping my eye on that guy for a minute, but this one was really the one that sold me on it. I think this dude's the real deal on the feet. He's good on the ground. We've already seen it. And he trains at a good gym with Sean Brady and those guys over in Philadelphia. I think they're building like a sneaky good team over there. I think that Joe Pyfer is, I don't know, I think he's the real deal. What did you think about that win over Meerschaert? I don't know if you happened to catch that one.
I was impressed, obviously. I mean, how could you not? Whether or not you know a lot about, you're keeping an eye on this guy going into the fight or whatever. But you see a performance like that, like, you gotta give it its props. I think with me, I think Meerschaert is a good name to give, a guy too that you're trying to gradually bring up and you think brings a lot of potential. Just
remember when they fed him the Hamzat? That was a bad one. I love Gerald Meerschaert, dude. He's funny.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah, that
good
was
guy. He fights.
I became a fan of him when he I forget, he finished someone by a triangle like a few years ago, and I just went on his Instagram afterwards, and there was a video of him wearing like a basketball jersey and jean shorts. And he just turns around and he's just playing the saxophone. The most beautiful riff, by the way. He's very good. He's not a bad saxophone player. And I was just like, anybody who would just post that on Instagram just for a few laughs, I'm instantly a fan. And I've been a fan of Gerald Meerschaert ever since then. So it's always unfortunate to see him lose to guys like this who are up and coming. But
yeah. I think let's just see more from Pyfer, honestly.
Yeah.
At least with
I
me.
think my thing is I'm excited to see more. I'm curious to see who they. Well, actually, I don't know if you saw him. We've been talking about the MMA Hour a little bit because we're recording this on Monday instead of Sunday now. But he was really adamant that he wants Dustin Stoltzfus for his next fight because he wants to avenge I think it was it's either on the Contender Series or his first fight after it. I do remember it because he hurt his arm and that's kind of what ended the fight. It was a very weird thing. I think he mat returned him. And then he dislocated his elbow, and it was just a weird kind of thing that ended it. Doctor stoppage more than anything, but he wants that fight back badly, and it's a step back for him, which is kind of weird. But I kind of love his point. I was talking about how I liked how Izzy is such a big competitor. Pyfer has that same type of mindset. He's he beat me, I want this fight back, and he said something that really resonated with me. He said, "This is the fight game. I want to fight this guy, so why can't I fight him?" And I'm like, yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, it's a pretty solid point. I mean, he wants it. The other guy kind of does, kind of doesn't. I think that the UFC could book it, and this could be, I don't know, I think it could be interesting. But I don't know if you had any other prelims that you wanted to bring up before I get to the last little subject here.
No, you're good. We can keep it going. I think at least to just touch on if that's got a story going behind it, and you got this guy calling for it, I mean, you gotta find a way to
Very
get it done.
adamantly, like passionately wants that fight back.
Yeah, you
So
gotta get it done, especially if you want to put this guy's name out there more. So
yeah, and I think that you might get some interesting shit talk. He's a pretty respectful guy, but in this sense, he just really wants this fight back.
yeah,
But I think the last thing that is worth mentioning, and you know, I know me and you are going to be really hyped to talk about this. You know, the legendary fight at UFC 189, Robbie Lawler versus Rory MacDonald 2, makes the fight wing at the UFC Hall of Fame. I won't say overdue because it was 2015, so it was relatively recent. But man, I'm so happy about that because I don't know about you, but for me, this is my favorite fight of all time. And I know a lot of people agree with me, and even if they don't, it's usually in people's top fives. And I'll say this, if you guys have not seen that fight, what are you doing? Look it up when this pod ends in a few minutes because you will not regret it. Like, I don't know, we could start anywhere with this one. Do you think like maybe talking about just how like the story of the fight itself is just really cool because Robbie and Rory fought at UFC 167 a few years earlier, and that was a really close fight and a fun fight too. Underrated fight because of the second one. People forget just how fun that first fight was too. But they get booked again when Lawler's the champion. UFC 189, they're the co-main event to Chad Mendes versus Conor McGregor for the interim featherweight title. So McGregor's first title fight was the main event of this, just to give you guys an idea of the timeline here. But the first couple rounds, Lawler is picking apart Rory with the jab. Broke his nose probably on like the first or second jab, according to Rory. And, I think Big John was talking about this one time. Big John McCarthy, the ref. He said that Rory had a thing going on in that fight that people didn't even realize. The blood coming from his nose he wasn't swallowing it. It was going in his lungs. So he couldn't breathe. So basically by the time they got to the third round and Rory hurts Robbie with a head kick and he just unloads on him and tries to finish the fight right there. And Rory has said since that he was completely exhausted because he could not breathe. His cardio was done at that point. Round 4, he hurts Robbie again in the beginning, comes out guns blazing, doesn't finish him. The end of that round, obviously one of the best moments in UFC history, that fucking stare down. We're both covered in blood. And then round 5, Robbie just breaks him, and he hit him one too many times on that broken nose. And I think Rory said one time that every time Robbie hit him, he just saw white in the 5th round, which is like, that's got to be a crazy amount of pain. And Rory just kind of fell, and that fight ended via TKO, and Robbie's lip is split. It's just unreal visuals from that fight. But, I think I've talked enough about just how awesome I think that fight is and why. And feel free to repeat any of the points that I have because I'm pretty sure everybody would agree with us. But what are some of the things about that fight that you just love? Because I know this is one of my favorites ever.
Well, it is my favorite ever. So there's that, and there's you ran it down. Like I got chills even just listening to you talk about it. So it's
just one of those fights, man. Like when I think about it, I get fired up because it's not the most eventful.
Well, it's cool to see. Yeah, it's cool to see something like this happen for it because there's another thing I didn't know was gonna happen or see coming. So
this Hall of Fame class has been nice so far this year. I think that this was the last thing that's gonna be added. So nice ending to it. I think that this is I agree with you, best fight I've ever seen. That's for sure. And like I said, it's not the craziest war. Like I think there's fights like Johnson versus Gaethje and other fights that you could rattle off. Swanson versus Choi. It's not constant action, but the duration of the 5 rounds of this fight, I don't think you'll ever see anything like that. That's better.
Oh yeah, so I forget who it was exactly, but pretty much painted like mixed martial arts like art. It's a canvas.
Yeah.
Your opponent is your canvas, and then that's whatever damage you do to them is what it comes out to be. And so I think a fight like that just embodies just everything about just you have a title on the line and a rematch, and just
Yeah, man.
that fight had literally everything going for it. So I think just throughout, I think the fight itself just told a awesome story, and
Just
I
of
think
like resilience, just toughness. Like it was truly a fight where both guys laid everything on the line and they left it out there. And obviously Rory MacDonald wasn't really the same after that fight, and Lawler really wasn't either. He had, I think, the win against Condit in the next one, and then after that it was just kind of, mixed results. And it's crazy like that happens sometimes. That's why we always hammer down the point, like, you guys got to respect these people for doing what they're doing, because they're leaving pieces of themselves in that octagon, and they'll never be the same after a fight like that. And that's like a war that changes people. And Rory got paid $59,000 for that fight, which is nowhere near enough. And then you think about all the wars that Robbie Lawler's had, both fights with Rory, both fights with Johnny Hendricks, Condit, Donald Cerrone. Even the Ben Askren fight was a crazy one, even though he didn't really get hit in that. Or Melvin Manhoof, even like going back to like Strikeforce days. These guys have had great careers, and this one was just the defining one.
You were going to talk about afterwards, and those two clearly weren't the same at all. No. After, you're never going to, I think when you factor that as you're watching the fight in real time, and you factor in like, whether it's afterwards or during it, the fact that neither of these guys are going to be the same after this, like, this is it. This is their peak performance right here, the both of them. And then whoever has going to get their hand raised, that's it. Like, they're the better man. Like, that's just crazy, and that's what it's all about.
It's an unreal fight.
You don't script it better than that. So
yeah, and that fight too was like one of the first ones I really remember watching. Like, when I was first getting into the UFC, like, I was definitely a casual back in the early days in like 2015. Because like I've said this before, Jones Cormier is kind of where it started for me, where I first like got interest in it. And like during that is kind of when Conor was on his rise and Ronda was already the champion, and her star could not have been bigger at that point. So like 189 was probably like 6-7 months after Jones Cormier. So seeing McGregor's first title fight and then this one being the co-main, just as a kid, those are the types of things that you don't forget. And yeah, I mean, well deserved. This fight is a easy pick for UFC Hall of Fame, and I hope both guys are at the ceremony, man. I know Rory, he had his problem with the UFC and the pay that they gave him. I really hope that he doesn't get like stiffed out of this event just because of that, because him and Robbie both should be standing up there on that podium with the trophies. It would be unfortunate if Rory isn't there. That's just how I view it. I hope that they can put like the differences aside just to give us that, you know what I mean? But only time will tell in July. But next week we got some good fights. Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen in the main event in Kansas City. So we do get a crowd for this one. I like that. Always like that. So we'll be back next week talking about that, and we'll see you guys then.